Steeler Nation, we are back for another great episode on the one and only The Sick Podcast, Steeler Crazy. I am Jay York Football. As always, joined alongside me, Mic'd Up Sports One. How's everything? Not much going on in Steeler land right now, but I think that there could be a big announcement coming here soon. You just never know. But rather than that, it's been gloomy in Pittsburgh. I feel like I'm like Joe DiNardo or Jeff Rosella. I always kind of, give the weather forecast as well to start the podcast. But how are you?
Yeah, it's always kind of funny to me because these are delayed podcasts; they're not live. So you're like, "Well, it's gloomy," and then the next day it could be
it's been gloomy
78
here,
and sunny. But yeah, we don't need to talk weather. You're right. I mean, it's not much going on in the NFL right now except the pushing of Tushes. I guess that'll stick around, and we'll talk to somebody today who has to see that twice a year from rival Philadelphia Eagles. So I guess we'll see how he feels about that. But it's slow season. Obviously, we're going to have, OTAs coming up relatively soon. But until then, it's just obviously a lot of Aaron Rodgers speculation in the Steel City.
Yep. Juliana, press play.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Steelers Crazy.
Harris Smith shields. Flacco, Polamalu takes it home. Super Bowl 43. Pittsburgh might be bound for that thanks to number 43.
The sickest Pittsburgh Steelers podcast.
Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
This gentleman, he is a senior writer and NFL reporter for The Athletic. He's got a podcast, Last Man Standing, and you can find him on X at Ben Standig. We're excited to welcome him in and chat some football today. Ben, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for jumping on with us. And you know what? Just the top of my mind, we were talking Tush Push. You guys got to see the Eagles twice a year, obviously, 3 times a year last year. What am I talking about? Just curious your thoughts on the old pushing of Tushes.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm like most NFL, put this in the fans bucket of the play feels unnatural. Like it just does not feel like it's a football play. Now, my one hesitancy to say they should ban it is it's not like other teams couldn't have done this once they saw the effectiveness of the Eagles. And I guess there are moments where, if you want to tell me that the Eagles had some success, the Bills had some success with it, and maybe other teams here and there, but nothing like the Eagles. So it's a play that exists that one team has been able to really utilize far more than the rest. I don't love the play though, so I would not have minded if it had gone away. I think what's interesting with Washington though is it got so much attention specifically with these two teams because of the NFC Championship game where Frankie Louvu dives over the line twice in an attempt to stop the play, and then there was a third consecutive play where Washington was drawn offside because Jalen Hurts did a hard count anticipating that moment from that potential play from Louvu. I personally thought that I don't know why Louvu got dumped on as much. It seemed to me he was trying to do whatever he could do to stop the play. If they're going to do this thing, how do you counter it? Clearly, nobody's figured it out. So he, instead of going into the pile, he went over the pile. So I'm okay with it. I mean, I wouldn't have minded if it had gone away. It's still there. Washington and every other team's gonna have to figure out a way to stop it. It's annoying. Jalen Hurts is really good at that. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a weird play. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, I hear you. It's interesting because I'm sure, from Steelers' perspective, if Jalen Hurts was on our team, I would be like, what are you talking about? It's an advantage because we have a quarterback who can squat 500 pounds. A lot of people would take that. I don't think Jaden Daniels is going to be risking that many times, or the guys like Lamar Jackson, but you mentioned Josh Allen, somebody who would, even though against the Chiefs in the AFC Championship, I remember him failing multiple times. But I certainly hear that. And I want to, kind of a strange transition, but we're going to start from the top where the offseason obviously has been the majority of discussion, and kind of head back to the NFL draft because we know that obviously you did a lot of work on multiple players, of course, not just Commanders related, but mock drafts left and right, first round. So I want to ask you potentially about a couple of Steelers picks. I think I'm actually going to start with Caleb Johnson because I know the Commanders were in the market for a running back. So I'm assuming that you did some homework on Caleb. And how do you feel about him as Steeler fans are excited about the new addition?
Yeah, Caleb Johnson was an interesting one. I mean, so to my eyes for Washington, they needed more of an explosive back if they were going to bring in somebody. They already have sort of not that Caleb Johnson is limited to being like an in-between tackles guy, but he's got a little more power than, say, a Travion Henderson did. So I was looking at more guys like that or some of these like change of pace scat back types than another guy who was, a bit bigger. But yeah, for a team like Pittsburgh, it makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, to have, clearly a need with the uncertainty at quarterback, whether Aaron Rodgers shows up or not, having, a formidable running game is going to be key. Obviously, Najee Harris is gone, et cetera. So I think it's a good fit for Pittsburgh in ways that I didn't for Washington. And therefore, to be honest, I didn't look at him as much as I might have others because I just figured, and I think correctly, that he wasn't for them. But like I said, I do think for Pittsburgh, he does seem to make sense.
Fair. Want to ask you a little bit about the first round pick. I'm not sure, how strong you guys are on the defensive line. I guess I would lean towards a weaker position, relatively weaker position on your team. How much did you look at Derek Harmon, new Steeler defensive lineman?
Yeah, so Washington's weaknesses on the defensive line are more on the edge at tackle. They drafted Johnny Newton in the second round. Last year, they still have Daron Payne, and they signed Javon Kinlaw in free agency. That doesn't mean they couldn't have taken a Harmon if he had been there. And every time I was doing a mock draft, I largely think I was focusing on defensive tackle. Like, other than those moments of oh, they're going to take Shedeur Sanders, the defensive tackle to me felt like the position that made the most sense. Now, which guy was it going to be? Grant or Harmon or Nolan? That was the question I think everybody kind of had. What's the order for these guys? But I really liked Harmon a lot personally. I thought, to me, I'd want to sit here and say that I had him definitely over the other two, but just based on what I had seen and read and just talked to people, he was the one I thought made a lot of sense. It's really good at getting up the field and penetrating, and I really like him as a player. So I think that's a good move for the Steelers. And look, I will never fault a team for going for the line on either side of the line when in doubt, or tie goes to the big guy. I won't have any issue with that. Clearly that was a need for the Steelers. So, I think that makes a lot of sense. And look, the other two guys were gone. So if you did, this was a draft where it was pretty deep at that position, but if you wanted one of the first round guys, he was the last one there. So I thought again, that move made plenty of sense for where Pittsburgh is at right now.
Yeah, the Eagles certainly the blueprint when you talk about, building up the trenches. And before I throw it over to Jordan, hopefully no salt in the wound for you or anybody if they're a Commanders fan watching this, but Johnny Newton, a bit of a Steelers hero, good kid. Obviously, you kind of feel bad for him, but the offsides last year, anytime you bring up Johnny Newton, we certainly won't forget that moment. You guys went to the NFC Championship game, so I guess the Steelers don't have much talking to do. Jordan, go ahead.
Well, that was a perfect segue into my question. Is we always like to ask from the outside looking in, what are your thoughts on Mike Tomlin? Obviously, the recent playoff success, the non-losing seasons in Pittsburgh has kind of run its way out. I just think that his message is still, I think a lot of people do. What are your overall thoughts on Mike Tomlin? Obviously, he's a great coach, but I think it goes to say we always use the same. And now I think I use this on every single podcast that we've done. It's the Andy Reid, his time was up in Philadelphia and then he found success in Kansas City. I think that's kind of where Mike Tomlin's at because there hasn't been much, playoff success in Pittsburgh as of late.
Yeah, from the outside, I have that kind of feeling as well. Obviously, the overall record remarkable. The seasons above 500, all that. That's nuts, especially compared to say a situation like here where a 500 season sometimes feels like a win. But obviously, if you're going to constantly be trying to be in contention, just sort of getting to a winning record is not enough. Obviously, it's been a challenge for Pittsburgh post Ben Roethlisberger. Just having lack of consistency at quarterback. I know, again, Washington fans know about that. And, they had, in recent years gone through the various, to different degrees, Kirk Cousins, Alex Smith, Sam Howell, Carson Wentz. Like, it's just this constant, especially the veteran type, so constant guys coming in and out, trying to find somebody, and nothing ever seems to stick. And you got to have a long-term answer at that position. So, unless you're telling me that it's just been bad luck as to what they haven't been able to find a quarterback. And when you're constantly picking, in the 20s, that's obviously more challenging to get one. But the other possibility to me would seem to be that the message has just gotten stagnant. And, again, because they continually have success, they don't have flop seasons. The players clearly are still listening, but something is not there. So either you're telling me it's the quarterback and they understand it, they got to keep finding one, or there's another aspect here. And the only other aspect, again, from the outside to me, would seem to be Tomlin. And you mentioned Andy Reid. I think that's a perfect, example. Look, there is a danger of be careful what you wish for, i.e. make the move thinking a new voice comes in and helps, and then the new voice doesn't work at all. But where is this going? Just having another season of good but not good enough does not feel satisfying at all. And if anything, it just get tired and old. Like, not that anybody wants to have a losing season, but at least to a degree, a losing season puts a team like the Steelers in position for possibly a top 10 pick, and therefore getting that quarterback answer in ways that where they're picking now typically won't. So, yeah, I'm not here to say fire Mike Tomlin, but I understand if somebody thinks, hey, they need a new voice in the building because what's happening now, it just feels stagnant.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And let's talk about, you talked about that quarterback position. I don't think we've done one podcast again that hasn't mentioned it. You mentioned it without us even asking the question, and that's obviously the Aaron Rodgers saga. It's just been on and on and on. At this point, from my belief, I think that they have a handshake deal behind closed doors. And they're just kind of waiting, just kind of see where where do you think this ends up? Do you think he actually does ultimately sign with the Steelers, or his retirement? Where are you kind of at on this? If you've been following it, which I'm sure.
I mean, I would assume he's going to play for the Steelers, but I mean, I guess it's more to me like, I guess to me it's more like, even though let's say he does play. Look, I think of any quarterback, I'm way older than you guys, and I think of any quarterback I've ever watched. I'm not saying the breadth of their career, but the peak of their talent. Aaron Rodgers may be the best quarterback I've ever seen. But there's a lot that comes with that in recent years, and that talent is no longer that elite. He was actually not terrible last year, but neither was Russell Wilson. I mean, it's not like, he's not winning it for you the way he could in the past, the way elite quarterbacks can. So you're taking that, and you're taking on the headaches, though, of a guy who still thinks he's an elite quarterback and then some. The fact that Pittsburgh, regardless of what Aaron Rodgers does, the fact that Pittsburgh left themselves in this position where they kind of have to wait on this guy, I think to me signals that something is off here with the organization. Like, whether that's Tomlin, whether that's the front office, something else, I don't know. But like, this is a bad spot to be in to have to. He better show up. I mean, I know a lot of Steelers fans seem to have a higher regard for Mason Rudolph than people on the outside. So I'm not going to get into that. But unless Mason Rudolph is deemed the answer, or there's a way to get Kirk Cousins without it being cost prohibitive, what else are you going to do? And I just think that's such a tough place to be in. Again, for a 41-year-old guy who doesn't have the same arm strength, who doesn't look like he wants to get hit much, who, again, every time he talks, you're like, oh no, now what? Like, so. And especially for Pittsburgh, it's one thing for most other organizations. It's one of the highlights of the Steelers for all these years is, model of professionalism, except for maybe a couple of receivers here and there. Model of professionalism, So I don't know. It doesn't feel like a great fit, but it also feels like the only fit. And again, this is where I kind of like, do they need to shake up? Who's running the show? Who's the top voices? just for simply even being in this position. But yeah, I'll assume Rodgers shows up because, I don't think he wants to go out the way he went out with the Jets.
Great, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. You kind of alluded to it there as well. I kind of want to get you out of here on this. How do you feel about George Pickens being in the NFC East, and how many fights are you anticipating with Marshawn Lattimore and Shane Restill in those games with Pickens?
Yeah, I mean, I think on the one hand, look, Dallas needed another receiver opposite CeeDee Lamb to, draw attention, things like that. And George Pickens is certainly very talented. He can get down the field. I mean, you guys saw it every week, but whatever Russell Wilson's limitations were, he seemed to be constantly finding Pickens down the sideline for those deep throws. But yeah, there's a reason why Pittsburgh, a team that now has its own receiver question on opposite DK Metcalf, was willing to make this trade because Pickens can be a tough hang, I guess we could say. And now he's going to be opposite a guy in CeeDee Lamb who dominates targets, right? And as we all know, everything that happens in Dallas gets amplified to the nth degree. And, is Pickens going to, change at all to the point where he doesn't have any outbursts, flare-ups, whatever it might be that the media is going to sort of poke at? Probably not. So it feels like it's a very combustible situation, yet simultaneously it's potentially a really dangerous one for the rest of the teams because, again, a Pickens-Lamb combo has, with Dak Prescott, a healthy Dak Prescott, has a lot of promise. So, yeah, I think it's going to be curious. Look, this whole division is loaded at receiver now. When you tack on Pickens to CeeDee Lamb, to Malik Neighbors, to A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel. So it's going to be a lot of interesting receivers. And the Pickens situation is going to be one of the more intriguing ones for all the reasons I just kind of laid out.
No doubt about it. It's must-see TV. You're must-read, must-listen. What do you got coming up? Let everybody know and where they can find you.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, my podcast is the Last Man Standing podcast. I obviously talk primarily about the Commanders, but I try to touch on a lot of different NFL topics. And, yeah, you can read my work at The Athletic. I'm on Twitter at Ben Standig, all that fun stuff.
Awesome.
We really appreciate it.
Hope you enjoyed it. We really did.
Yeah, no, thanks. Good luck. Be curious to see what happens.
Yeah, you guys as well. Wish we had a rematch this year, maybe in the Super Bowl. You never know.
We'll do a Super Bowl episode. So mark it on your calendar.
We'll talk to you in late January.
Deal.
Thanks again, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, some great quotes. And I tell you what, when I watched Aaron Rodgers at his peak, I had that same thought many times. I said, this is the greatest story of the football I've ever seen in my life. This is the best quarterback I've ever seen in my life. No disrespect to Tom Brady. This is more so on the field. Brady as a complete package, intangible-wise, leadership, winning. Yeah, he's obviously the GOAT and a better quarterback. But purely on the field, Aaron Rodgers superior than anybody I'd ever seen in my life. So, like that quote from him. And, yeah, I mean, all roads seemingly lead to Rodgers at some point here. But, heck, it's been a pain.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I'm just like, I think that it's definitely going to happen, and I'm going to root for him, but I just don't think overall it's the best decision. Like he kind of said it. I like that coming from a Commanders reporter saying, hey, I just think that the Steelers, they're not, you bring him in, like you said, maybe get to the playoffs, but it'd be nice to have a top 10 pick and kind of get your QB for the future because I don't know what they really expect with a 41-year-old quarterback. And that's just being flat out honest. Like you said, I think his best days are behind him, but he can still sling it. But you have about 1 year, 2 year window there. I would say one realistically. But like I said, I always root for anyone who's in the black and gold. I just think that, but I think it's inevitable at this point that it's going to happen. It's just more of a question of when.
Yeah, who knows what's going on in his mind, and it is definitely unfortunate to hear some of the personal issues he's going through. You never know what somebody's going through in their life, that's for sure. So hate to speculate on something like that whatsoever. But just from a human aspect, we hope everything's okay with him, whether he's a Steeler or not a Steeler. That's irregardless of that when it comes to personal issues.
All right. Well, it's been another great episode of the Sick Podcast, Steeler Crazy. Make sure you subscribe, and we will see everyone soon. Juliana, take it away.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Steelers Crazy on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.